right, all right, all right. Welcome to the Steve and Cimino Says podcast issue number 4.
And I'm Steve. Boom!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Steve and Cimino Says podcast, episode 4. See, we're still new at this. We make our mistakes. Put up with us for now. But, Otto, what have we been forgetting to tell the people out there that we should be telling them? What should we?
We should always be telling everybody to comment, like, share, subscribe. More importantly, thanks for watching all these videos that we talk so much bronze, silver age comic goodness that you need to remember when these shows are on.
Yeah, we'll get it better. Okay, this is another episode where Steve is going to take the reins here. We got another spotlight, but not a story, not a saga. It's on a character. Oh, who could that be, Steve?
Well, as you can see from this magnificent t-shirt, which I only wear on the most special of occasions, because I only like to wash this t-shirt, in very light water. I want it to last forever. Of course, we are talking about Nova, the Richard Rider Nova. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, the Richard Rider. Now, Otto, before we go from the grotto, thanks to 3 men in the basement, all down there. Otto, give us your little hand on Nova. What do you like about Nova? Do you know Nova? Anything?
I know Nova. I know the Nova Corps. I enjoyed it. It was a fun story. Marv Wolfman greatness. I really enjoy it. I get up to about issue 12 and then I stop with it, but loved Annihilation. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. And just great stories and great fun, Bronze Age goodness, in my opinion. So I'll listen to what you guys have to say.
Well, the costume, first of all, Steve, what do you think?
I've always loved that costume. It is ingrained, burned into every cell in my body. I love that costume. Love it.
Okay, so Steve, you're the guy that's more of an expert. I always loved Nova too. I always thought, a lot of people compared the Nova Corps and all that to Green Lantern and all that stuff. But let me tell you something. I like the Nova Corps a little bit better. I mean, that's just me. We're pro Marvel in these neck of the woods, so I don't know. But why don't you talking and tell the fans why we love Nova, why we should be reading Nova. You're the man.
Now, this is another one of those stories that starts with the genesis of my actual comic collecting. It goes right back to the beginning. So I had just sort of started, trying to find and buy comics myself. I'm back in England. I'm a little kid. It's 1984. And I just started going, our first comic shop had just opened. There was no back issues. And then one day I was walking through the town of Southend, and I went to an area where they have secondhand stores. And in the displays, and one of this little tiny flea-bitten, just pile of rubbish store, they had a copy of Nova number 3. Okay? Oh my God, that beautiful red was just screaming out of the window. And I was like, wow, who's that guy in the blue? It's Diamond Head. Okay. It didn't have a price on it. It wasn't in a bag and board. Okay. Because remember, we're talking about 1984.
Yeah, they were just there.
I walk in and some old lady comes out. She was probably 109. And I was like, excuse me, the comic's in the window. I said, how much is that comic in the window? And she said, It's 10 pence. 10 pence. The equivalent of about, at that time, 20 cents.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, I was poor, right? But I know I could handle that. I had this big smile, and I said, I'll take that one. Okay. So she goes in, and I remember she sort of grabbed it in a rough way, and I was like, oh, I don't think that's the way you're supposed to handle them. Even then, I knew. So she sort of claw, and she like gave it to me, and I'm like, oh, I just spent 10 pence on that book, right? Which is nothing. So I picked up the book, and just to make you guys laugh, there was a comic right next to it. Okay. And I said, oh, how much is that one? She goes, oh, that's 50p. And I was like, 50 pence? It was Werewolf by Night number 32.
Oh.
Right next to it. Okay.
Wow.
I went there next week and picked it up. But we're not going to talk about that right now.
Thank goodness.
I still have that book. Anyway,
Otto, those were such throwaway copies back
They really
in the day.
were.
Nobody cared about
Nobody
those.
cared about it. No.
Think of those dollar boxes, or like just those stacks in the side and behind stuff, just stacks. Those things were all those bronze things. Yeah. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
So anyway, it's usually a 2-hour trip for me to get on the train and get all the way home. But on the train, and by the way, I have one at my house all the time, just loose, okay? Because I have to have Diamond Head with me every day. So I'm on the way home. Of course, it's issue 3, right? So I didn't get the origin, okay? And again, it's England. We don't have a real comic shop. There's no eBay where I could just go and order the copies. I'm sort of running blind. So my first issue of Nova, and first thing that I noticed was I loved the art. It was so dynamic. And I was just like, wow. And I looked at the box again, and it said Sal Buscema. And I was like, Sal Buscema. Sal Buscema. Oh, that must be related to John Buscema in some way, because I had just seen John. And I was like, wow. I had no idea who was the younger, who was the older, anything like that. All I know is I started to read the issue on the train. And it's the issue of Diamond Head. And I've got to give credit to Marv Wolfman. I really do. The origin of Diamond Head is so ridiculous that it's genius. Basically, there's this guy, his name is Archdiker. He's a thug bully, and he's going to become a criminal. He gets caught in this little warehouse area, like a special place where they have a lab, and he gets hit by a diamond laser. Okay, he runs in and gets hit by the diamond laser.
Makes sense.
And instead of dying, he gets transformed into this diamond being. Okay, I mean, I always wondered, are his insides diamond as well? It was just, and I've read it 1,000 times, and I love it. And the funny thing is that for years later, when people would say, "Hey, who are you? Some of the villains you like?" and I'd say Diamond Head, and people would look at me and they'd be like, what is that? You mean, what about Apocalypse? What about Thanos? I'm like, you've never heard of Diamond Head? So quite quickly, I realized the first thing that's going to draw me in is Sal Buscema's art. If any one of you out there hasn't seen it, it's probably one of the most dynamic things you're ever going to see. And
he comes from the Jack Kirby school, you know,
so much action.
Yeah, those punches, just crazy. Like,
it was incredible. A little while later on, of course, I picked up my first back issue of the Hulk, which was issue 194, and then all the pieces come together, and I was I'm a Sal Buscema man, and that's why I have a Sal Buscema on my arm. Okay, a Sal Buscema on my arm. So that's how crazy I am about Sal Buscema.
Right.
So I'm reading this issue. There's some other stuff going on there which sort of relates to issue 1. It's very cleverly written. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, what's going on? The thing is that's amazing about this is it goes against type for me. When people find out that I like Nova, they also know that I really don't like teenage characters in general. I never liked them. I was always like, I liked Reed Richards. I didn't like Johnny Storm too much. You know, I was always going for the older characters. Oh, I like Captain America, did not like Bucky. Okay. And here I am reading about this young Richard Rider who looked like he was maybe 16 or 17 in this issue. And he's at school, you know, and he's just a kid. But Marv Wolfman was writing it in such a beautiful style that I was engaged in Richard Rider's life. And it's the only time it's ever happened. Believe you me, years later, like when the New Warriors came out, I don't want to read about teenagers. Can't stand reading about teenagers. You put a teenager in front of me today, I'll tear that book up. But when it comes to Richard Rider, I was immediately engaged. So I have the book, I read it, there has this little mystery. The next thing is, what am I going to do? I have this single issue sitting in my house. I know it's issue 3. I go to the comic shop next week. And I was like, well, I know I picked up this comic from the flea market. And then, I remember the owner was sort of like, oh, you're buying comics from somewhere else? I didn't understand, how I'd piss him off. And I said, I got a Nova. I said, I got a Nova number 3. I said, please, I need more Novas. I need more Novas. And he was like, okay, Steve. Well, within 3 weeks, he comes back with issue 2.
Oh.
Okay. He comes back with you. I was so thankful it was issue 2. Okay. Because some of the answers, some of the stuff that in issue 3. Okay. And issue 2. Oh, look at that cover. Look at that. That's Powerhouse and Condor.
Yeah.
And Condor is Marv Wolfman magnificence. He's supposed to be a criminal empire king, and he's dressed in a ridiculous costume and he's got wings. And I love everything about it. I love it.
Yeah, but Steve, hold on for a second. Yeah, I know how you say, the costume's ridiculous, but back then we didn't think so. We just saw when I saw those costumes, and I knew they were lower tier villains, but they still looked awesome to me. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm older and I can see it with, eyes, yeah, it looks a little silly, but I was so raw to the medium, and everything was like brand new that everything looked good to me. Even some of the cheesier stuff, I'm talking about the Marvel stuff more than the DC stuff. I don't know. Just this Marvel stuff, it always screamed at me. So even when you see the lower tier and they have these kind of funky costumes, I loved it, even then. So,
yes. Again, me not, being experienced with superheroes, to me, it was just fantastic. But now, and years later, when I read, and by the way, I read them all the time. Whenever I look at that costume, I'm thinking of Marv Wolfman doing the design and writing. It's like, okay, he wants to be at the top of a criminal empire. So he's going to have the symbol of a condor on his chest. It is brilliant. And it just segues into everything that I love, because it asks you to let go of your imagination. Let it fly. Marv's going to take us on this journey, okay? And if that book was being created today, the Condor would come along and he would have a long jacket, he would have a ponytail, and that would be it. He goes, I'd be the Condor, he'd be smoking a cigarette, and it'd be like, oh, that's the Condor, huh? Okay. No, we're talking, this is 1977. So it's just truly melodramatic and grandiose. But as a young reader, again, not knowing anything, this is my first exposure to anything type of cosmic. And Powerhouse has this, poor, woe to me aspect. And Condor's like this ridiculous bully. You're going to do as I say, And poor Nova, he has no power against Powerhouse. Little did I know, of course, that Marv is building this mystery, So I read issue 2, and it wasn't enough. I kept reading issues 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3. And all I was doing was like, next week I'm going down to the comic shop. I got enough money for the train station. I've got £1 or £2 in my pocket. I didn't have a lot of money. So I knew it was a couple of little books. Oh. I went back to the comic shop and I was like, please, when are you going to London again? When are you going to London? And I remember it drove my shop owner nuts, because he was trying to expand me on other material. He was very good friends. By the way, his name is Gary Spencer Millage. He's responsible for a comic called Strange Haven today. Okay, very famous independent book. He was my comic shop owner.
Awesome.
He was friends with Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, all of the English legends. Okay, so whenever I came into the show, he goes, "Hey, look at this. This is a Bolland book. Look at this. This is, Alan Moore." And I was like, "Where's the Novas and Hulks? Novas and Hulks." Poor guy. He would pull his hair out and he goes, "Don't you realize?" He goes, the industry's changing. He goes, "This is like, what is that?" I was like, "Oh no, please go to London." He goes, "Okay, I'll see what I can do." I was very fortunate that a couple of weeks later he comes back. And by the way, each week waiting for these issues to be filled in was an eternity. I know, John, you know what I mean.
Oh,
You
yeah.
couldn't just order. We had to wait.
And dream. And you dream about them. Like,
yes. And I was like, wow, what's going to go on? Finally, I go down to the comic shop. I buy a couple of new issues. And then he goes, "Oh, I did find something for you. He got me some Hulks. We'll talk about those at another time." And he pulls out Nova #4. Oh, yeah. Oh,
that was the first issue. That was the first issue I bought of Nova.
Okay. So I knew at the time that Thor was supposed to be a hero. And I knew because my guru friend, who I've mentioned before, told me that Thor was like one of the big three. No one messes with Thor. Okay. And so I'm reading through the issue, and it has Marv Wolfman has this magnificent origin of the Corruptor. This poor guy, he just gets covered in like chemicals, and he comes out and he's screaming. He's like, and I love it. Sal Buscema knows how to drain every bit of melodrama out of every panel. So there's just fire, there's smoke, and, Thor comes flying in, and then he gets exposed to the Corruptor. Yeah. Sal Buscema does this drawing of Thor, but with this shading under his eyes, which means this isn't Thor now. He's under the influence of just pure hatred right now. And he comes out, and Nova comes in like, "Hey, what's going on?" Right, he gets hit by the hammer. He's flying. I mean, I was like, "Oh my God!" So when he got hit like that, I remember thinking, this Nova is really tough. He's really tough. He gets hit and he bounces back. I mean, Diamond Head hit him hard, but we're talking about Thor right here. And there's another sequence in that issue where this guy who's just gained all these powers designs a costume for himself, which he thinks is adequate. It's just utterly brilliant. I mean, no one in the real world would come out with a costume. He looks like a cross between Mephisto and some other sorcerer. And every time you see him, he's like, he's got this maniacal look. So within these 3 issues that I've read, remember, issue 1 is a myth. Issue 1 was not available. Okay, I didn't see issue 1 for years. I asked. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I never see issue 1. That's why I'm so jealous. You American guys, you're like, oh, I need to get a Nova. Within 3 minutes, you got 10 copies of Nova 1. Okay. Yeah. But not in England. Okay. It did not exist. So I didn't get the #1. But within those 3 issues, I had fallen in love with Richard Rider, his supporting cast, and his powers and this mystery. Again, I had never read an issue of the Green Lantern in my life. Yeah. So to me, this is all fresh and new. Okay. It's all great. The next issue that I get, if I am correct, is issue 8. All right. Oh, issue 8 with Mega Man. And there's this little subplot going along where, Richard Rider's little buddy's like really terrified of this mysterious villain. You keep seeing, the little guy looking up, but you never see who this villain is. And he goes, "Yeah, I've come back. I've returned." This guy's like, "Oh, don't kill me." And I'm like, "Bloody hell, who is this?" And so there's this little origin sequence where we find out about Mega Man, who is just a regular human, gets sucked into this far distant dimension by going through a pool of water. Again, brilliant. Now, in that issue, Mega Man is turned into a creature, faceless, by this, how to explain it? It's like a little group of molecule things joined together inside a little brain thing. It's just like a puff of wind. And I was in love with this creature. I was like, wow. And then after I was reading it, it had a feminine aspect to it. You know, that's when it was realized. I was like, oh, this strange ball of chemicals was falling in love with Mega Man. So, again, it shows Marv Wolfman being more than one-dimensional. It wasn't like he was turned into this creature, and this creature was like, I want you to go to Earth and destroy everyone. Wasn't that at all. The creature saved the guy's life, rebuilt his body, didn't know what a human looked like, and just gave him a faceless face, but gave him all these abilities. Mega Man finds his way back to Earth, okay, and all he wants to do is go and see his wife and say, oh God, I've been waiting. I've always loved you. La 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 la. So in the next issue, he finds his wife. It doesn't go too well. She thinks that he's a hideous monster.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, it's me. I mean, I know I'm different, but it's me. And I've traveled billions and billions of light years and time and space to come and see you. And he's once Mega Man gets repulsed, he goes crazy, and then it's up to Nova to try and go in there and fix the situation.
Yeah.
And he's not really having a good time. That's a really great fight scenes again. Sabasema drawing above himself. And then as a kid, I remember reading it, and there's a little sequence at the end where the little chemical being finds its way to Earth, and then Mega Man's like, whoa, no, please, and says to his wife, all you've got to do is just say that you love me. Just say that you love me, and I will be safe. I will be here. And she's like, oh, God, I would never do that. Okay. And then the little chemical being goes, oh, I told you we were meant for each other. Boom, zaps him, and off he goes.
Oh,
okay. And then,
seems like one of my ex-girlfriends.
Yes. Oh, so Nova turns around, and's like, well, you know what, Chuck, I think he got the better end of the stick here. And off he flies. And I remember as a youngster, I was like, oh my God, he traveled all that way. It wasn't his fault that he didn't have a face. Marv. I'm telling you, when if Marv Wolfman gets to be on this show, again, you're going to be slathering. And by the way,
he's coming.
A couple of years later, no, in actual fact, in 1994, I went to a signing. George Perez, Marv Wolfman. They were doing a Teen Titans signing, California. Everyone's in line. Everyone's got their Teen Titans. Not me. I'm like, Marv, please, I need you to sign my Novas.
George was like, what is this?
He looks around and goes, and I was like, I said, I love Diamond Head. And I remember his face. He was sort of like, what is this giant guy doing in front of me, just slathering? I was just fawning, and I was like, do you realize this? And do you realize that? And I remember, he didn't know who I was. He just thought I was a freak. I have a photograph. I've got to find it. It's a photograph of me, and Marv with my Nova #1. But, and then he sort of asked me, he goes, did you read my Titans book? And I was like, no, but I do. I followed the Nova into Fantastic Four. And he's like, oh God, like, please get this guy away from me. I know if he comes on this thing, if he remembers me, I don't know. It's going to be one of the most hilarious parts of any program ever, because he may just leave.
You meet Marv Wolfman and you say, I love Diamond Head.
Yes.
Oh my God.
He's done so much.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't talk about Tomb of Dracula. I didn't talk about the Teen Titans. I didn't talk about Blade. I talked about Diamond Head.
Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean,
yes. Yeah, believe you me. So, yeah, it's funny how things go and how things fast forward. So I read those 2 issues, and then there was like an eternity of getting no issues. An eternity. It's like, oh, I just can't find him. I just can't find him. And then finally, about 6 months later on, he goes, I found an issue for you. And it was issue 20. Oh, God. Now, Otto, you said that you didn't get past issue 12.
That's
You're
correct.
lucky I'm not there right now, because there would be a large stick coming out and there'd be beatings going on.
Sure.
You have got to get past issue 12. There's a lot. You've got the Yellow Claw coming up. There's so much great stuff coming up. But in issue 20, and I'm quite proud of this fact, it features the first appearance of Project X. Now, as you can see, Project X is a Sherlock Holmes robot. Now, when I was doing my work as part of the Overstreet as an advisor, I rewrote the guide for Nova, and I specifically marked the first appearance of the Sherlock Holmes robot. If you guys open up the price guide, go to Nova, you will see that I explain who Project X is. No one else in the world would care, but to me, I loved that character.
That is fantastic.
I'm gonna go get my price guide and look this up.
Steve, just doing that, how awesome was that? Because you could do that. Like, that's so wonderful, like it's
it was one of the highlights of my life when that issue came out at San Diego, and I opened up the book and I went to the Nova section, and I was like, because at that time I thought they had editors and they edited things out. They don't. They just take it as is once it gets checked. And I looked at it and I was like, first appearance, Project X, Sherlock Holmes robot. And I sat back in my booth and I was like, I got it. Everything is complete. Everything is fantastic.
I've made it, Mom. I've made it.
I'm
top of the world, Mom. Top of the world.
But there's a whole section where the mystery is Richard's little brother, who's a genius. He builds the robot. He wants to find out, what's going on. Something weird is going on. Why is Richard flying out all the time and doing stuff? So he's built this little robot. He's going around and he's smoking a pipe. And he's a robot, and he's going along. And he follows him around for the whole issue. There's a whole sequence. Of course, that's Richard's father on the floor because he's, under the influence of evil. And he's trying his best to hide it from the family. It is just brilliant. And again, this goes into the strengths of the Marvel Universe, because what I didn't realize was that Project X Sherlock Holmes robot gets taken over by another Marv Wolfman character called Dr. Sun. Dr. Sun is one of the villains from Tomb of Dracula. He's basically a brain in a jar.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He doesn't get any. I've told you guys before, brains in jars, I'm all over it. Brain drain, you name it. The brain, I love it. So needless to say, when I finally got to the States, I went to the comic shop, and I'm telling you, one of the first things I did was I went over to the Nova section, and they had basically the whole run in there, and no one cared. I finally picked up issue 1. I picked up issue 1. Finally, yes. And I was so happy. And I remember the comic shop owner, it was in California, and I was like,
that was on the West Coast for you?
Yes, I was in California. And I was like so happy. And I put the stack of Novas down. And of course, the comic shop owner was probably like, oh God, I've had them in my back issue bins for years and they're not doing anything. He's never seen anyone as happy as me. So I was able to sit there and read issue 1. Finally, the pieces were coming together. I read the entire run. Everything came together. And then to my horror, issue 25 does not finish the story. It doesn't finish it. It starts off in Fantastic Four 204. So the next week, I drive in my car. I'm driving all the way down in Torrance, California to my comic shop. And I was like, went over to the Fantastic Four section. And he was missing a couple of issues. Can you believe that? He had 204. He was missing issue 212. Okay, you'll know why in a little bit. But it finishes off that story of all this plotting. There was this main villain. We get the introduction of the Sphinx.
Oh, yeah, the Sphinx.
They go off into space. They go back to Xandar. There's this massive clash with Galactus.
Oh, I love that.
Fantastic Four 204 to 213. Massive story. Again, I met Marv Wolfman at a convention, and I was like, "Oh, I really love your Fantastic Four. Your Fantastic Four is the best. I love that, the Galactus and the Sphinx." And he looked at me and he went, "Oh, really?" He goes, "I couldn't wait to get off the book." And I was like, "Well, what?" He goes, "Yeah, I just didn't think I was doing a good enough job. I couldn't compare it to Stan and Jack. I had to get off the book."
Right.
And I was like, "Really?" I was dumbfounded.
Right, really quick. When I talked to Roy about that, his run that came after a little after when Stan left, and then he did a little bit in there. He said he didn't like to do it either, and he said it was hard for them to find writers for the Fantastic Four because it was so hard to follow Stan and Jack, and nobody wanted to do it. So Marv saying that he probably had to do those issues, and he was probably doing as many as he had to, and then he wanted to get out of there. It's funny. They all like all these massive writers. You believe that? I couldn't believe they were all scared to do it.
I mean, I'm thinking Marv Wolfman is a god, and he was like, I was terrified of the book. I wanted to get off.
And he created a new Herald at the same time, right?
Yes.
Terrax, my favorite Herald.
Terrax.
Which one is it?
Terrax the Tamer.
Terrax the Tamer.
Oh, Terrax, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of my favorite
there's so
Heralds.
much great stuff in there. And it's funny. It starts off, if you're going to read it in one single narrative, and by the way, when I do my claim sales, I start off with Nova 1, I get to 25, then I do the Fantastic Fours. Okay, and then just for you guys to get really slathering, the whole story finishes in this issue right here. See this book? That there is ROM number 24. Now, when I first saw ROM 24, which I got as a 25-cent comic book, it was underneath someone's booth. I was like, "What is that?" He goes, "Oh, that's my ROMs. No one cares about that."
Yeah, no one
I was flicking through, and it said, "Guest starring Nova and the New Champions." Oh, I was screaming. Diamond Head is in there. It's unbelievable. I was rolling around on the floor for over a 25-cent book, full-grown man. And the funny thing is, I was just sort of at that time transitioning into becoming a dealer. I was supposed to be professional. And everyone's like, "Yes, Steve, I'm just putting money together to get my Amazing Fantasy 15 in a couple of weeks, la, la, la." And I'm like, "Wow, did you read ROM 24? It's unbelievable." And they're like, "That's a core book, Steve. Why are we talking about that?" So I had so many of these haughty-taughty dealers that laughed at me. And you can ask anyone. If you speak to John, of course, from Torpedo, people would come up to me, dealers would come up to me, and I would be the only one at conventions that would take whole runs of Nova, 1 through 25, every time. And John would be like, why are we, I need that space for something. No, we've got to get runs of Nova out there. I sold so many runs of Nova that years later, of course, as we know, things have changed, and there's lots of rumors. We know that we've had the Nova core in the Guardians movie. We know Nova's coming. Down the pipeline, we know he's coming. Yes. Now, we don't know whether it's going to be Richard Rider or the young kid that took over after. I'm praying that it's Richard Rider. Yes, that's the young kid.
Me too. It's got to be Richard Rider.
It's coming. And, of course, the issue 1 blew up in price. It just exploded, and I remember...
It's leveled off, though, quite a bit, though, right? It's leveled off, dipped a little bit.
Well,
yeah, but it'll get hot again
for a while. But now it's come back again.
So
yeah, it'll always come back.
I agree.
Once the rumblings for the movie stuff start coming, it'll all start exploding up again.
Now, I'm usually not the type of person that buys multiples. However, when it came to Nova,
autos and all like
buying and buying.
I
had basically at some point 2 through 25. I've had 25 copies each. Okay, and could I go buy there'd be 25 cents. I'm sorry, I cannot. They are not going to be 25 cents. They're coming home with me. And I had about 15 or 16 copies of issue 1. And then when all this hula came out, I pulled out 10 copies. I pulled my nice ones out and I sent them off. and I came back with 898s.
Wow.
And,
Oh my.
yes. So I immediately remembered all those haughty-taughty dealers that were like, ugh, you
Take 'em all,
disgust
take
me.
'em.
You disgust me. And I'm like, well, look at this. This is a 9.8. I just sold this for $1,000. And by the way, it cost me 50 cents. 50 cents. Thank you. And then I sold it. So I think I sold 6 of them. I have 2 of the 9.8s left, a couple of 9.6s and some 9.4s. But the people who bought those books for me at conventions, when those prices exploded, they would come back and, Steve, how did you know? They would treat me like I was some sort of guru. Oh, what's the next one, Steve? And I was like, no. I don't play that game. I said, I just love the book and I wanted you to read it and enjoy it. So we're in a position right now where something that I loved as a kid, which no one understood, is about once Nova appears on the big screen, you wait.
Yeah,
It's
those are
gonna
going to
be like wildfire. So for years, people laughed at me. They had no understanding. But Richard Rider and Nova have such a special place in my heart. And realistically speaking, at Torpedo, I like to be the only one to sell Novas. I hate it when anyone else sells Nova. I know that sounds
possessive
awful.
of your Nova. Hey, Steve, let me tell you a story what Nova did for me. I'm an agent, manager, all that stuff. But when I started in this business, after I left my teaching gig in 2013, I was a comic dealer, and that's when I met Otto. Right? Did I meet when I was?
I bought many of my books from you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was a pretty. I had the AF-15s. I was pretty good at being a low tier guy, but I had some good stuff, and I always knew the good stuff because I've been in it like you all the time. But it was 2015, and why I remember this so clearly, it was at the Rhode Island Comic Con, and I actually posted this story up on Facebook after it happened. But this was the first time. I brought Roy. To Rhode Island, and I remember I was still dealing. I had some guys work for me while I was taking care of Roy, but Roy was only there on Friday and Saturday. Then on Sunday, I went back to on the floor and selling comics with my guys. And I'll never forget this. This little kid came with his father, and he must have been about maybe 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. And he was talking with his father. He was just getting into the comics. He was just 2015, so the stuff is just hitting. Like the movies are out there, and this kid reminded me of me. He's soaking it all in. Such a nice kid. So I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, my son loves the movies and all that." So we're talking, and he says, I said to him, like, "Who's your favorite superhero?" He goes, "Nova." And he goes, his father was saying, like, yeah, he goes, he loves Nova and he likes to try to get some first appearances. He couldn't find a Nova at his price. He goes, he just didn't understand why there was so much money. And I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, and I was telling him about, like, the grades and, like, things, and he was learning. And he goes, yeah. I go, well, why Nova? And he said he saw the cartoon and he felt like the Spider-Man one. I think it was Ultimate Spider-Man at that time. I could be wrong at the exact one, but, but part of Spider-Man's entourage was the younger Nova. But he liked the Richard Rider one, and he was kind of educated on that, and he knew they were two different. So this was like a young kid. So I said to him, I just loved his passion, and I love what he felt for it. I looked in my back, and I started digging through my box, and I pull out, I go, the Nova #1. And I had it for $100 at that time. It wasn't so big at that time, still. So 100 was a pretty good price. And he goes, and that's when his father said it. He goes, you see, son, he goes, like, these things are expensive and all that. And I said, you really like Nova, right? He goes, oh yeah. I go, take it. I threw it to him. I gave it to him. And he goes, his father was like, the kid was shocked too. And I said, take it. I said, you're starting your collection now. Eventually, you keep doing this. Eventually, you're going to have a huge collection. You'll remember this, and you're going to start somebody else on. And I go, and that's how you keep it going. That's how you keep this business going. They were so happy. The little boy started to cry a little bit. He couldn't believe that. I was in love with this kid because of, like I said, he was learning. He knew things, and he was really soaking in. He reminded me of me. Nobody in those dealers would have ever given you a price. Anyways, I gave them that. It was such a good thing. And they kept saying thank you to me going off there. And it was just such a great moment that Nova was that kid's favorite. I just happened to have it, gave it to him, and I felt so good about it and stuff. And my friend John, who was my coworker there, he said to me, he goes, "That was awesome, man." I go, "No, that's the superheroes. That's how the superheroes give back." And that's something I think a lot of people are missing today. Yes, we want the value, yes, and all that stuff, but it's the love of. I that's what a lot of these collectors are missing and stuff. They just want the highest grade, the best, the 9.8s, the 10s, and all that stuff. Me, it was always about the actual thing. I love when a comic is loved and all that stuff. So, anyways, I always had a different perspective, but I loved that was a special Nova moment that I gave that kid. So who knows whatever happened to that kid or anything, but maybe he has that whole run now too. But he loved that.
You probably sparked something. You have no idea what you sparked right there. It's probably a massive thing. But you did mention to me earlier on that, after you read issue 4 of Nova, that you had some sort of like problems.
Yeah. When I was a kid, the fights, I didn't care about even really about story. I always loved the battles. I always loved, like, I would go through the back issues. Like I said, this is a new universe to me. And then when little comic book stores were popping up and they had like boxes of stuff and you could start seeing and you would pull it up. And when I remember pulling that one up, Nova versus Thor, I was like, I was always looking for fights. But I was so kind of weird with my fights, and I always wanted to know who won or who got the last punch in the comic. Even if it ended in a draw, that last punch meant something to me. So what happens in that Thor one? I'm looking through it. Thor comes out of his little haze. Nova comes in, and then Thor's a little dazed, and he's like, "Oh, no." And then he gets hit, and he goes flying. And then he crashes, and then he gets back up again and all that stuff. And then it ended. I was so mad. I wanted Thor to get that last hit. So I always had a little grudge against number 4. Obviously, it's Nova's book. They had to make him look good, but it got me so mad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, that's definitely, I love hearing that, because obviously I've read issue 4 9 million times, and I never once thought that. I always thought it was, very honorable for Thor. He had just been hit, right? But he once he had come to, he was like, wait a minute, this has been a giant misunderstanding, and I've been under the influence of something here. Because realistically speaking, if he wanted to, he could hammer Nova. But yeah, it's definitely fascinating.
Right, but you were older than me. I was a lot younger. So at the same time that we're looking at this stuff, I'm still naive and all that stuff.
Yes.
But once again, looking through those back issues, Submariner versus Hercules, it was just finding all those battles were so good. And I remember seeing Silver Surfer number 4, and it was like Thor versus Silver Surfer. But that was a little more expensive than the other ones, and I couldn't get it, and I couldn't understand. I was like, how come that one, it looks so good? It was like maybe $5, $7, maybe $10 at that time. Isn't that crazy, Otto? But it was so beyond what
Rainbow Bridge, no less.
Yeah, Otto's got tears coming out of his eyes right now. Don't say that.
I do, man. This is just hearing these stories, and you guys brings me back to a lot of the same things that I did, collected. And we all had stories, and I say every collector has a comic book story, and these are just fantastic to hear, man. But
one of the most amazing things that happened to me at a convention regarding Nova number 4 was, a guy came up to our booth. He's got like a little case, like a little, suitcase. And he comes by, and then he goes, and he knew John. He was some sort of art person. And so John's like, hey, do you have anything good? Right in front of me, he opens up this case. He had the original art of number 4, the cover, right there in front of me. And I just looked at it, and I looked at him, and I went, do you realize what you have here? And he's like, yeah, it's a nice piece. Yeah, it's very nice. I said, no.
No.
It's the piece.
Do you really realize what you have here? And my whole body was racked. Because, and John and this guy like, yeah, it's a nice Kirby piece, and I'm thinking, the art, I swear, actually began to float off the, just float in midair, and then just do this. And I was stunned into silence. One, that I was seeing it. I was that close. I didn't actually touch it because I didn't want to touch it. I just looked at it and I was like, that's one of my favorite covers of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, it's incredible. You know, I think it only cost him like $12K.
Oh, jeez.
Kirby, $12K. Whatever. You can only imagine how much it costs now.
Oh, yeah. Stupid.
But it's very funny how even today, collection comes in, big collection, and all the hawks, and all the vultures are pouring over. And I'll as soon as I see the Novas, that comes to my office. It comes to I'm the one that deals with Nova. And everyone's like, well, how come Steve's? I'm the one that sells Nova. No one else is qualified to do it.
Qualified to do it. Look at that.
No.
I like that term. No one else
no
is
way.
qualified.
Oh,
They've never even heard of the Project X Sherlock Holmes robot. They don't deserve to sell that.
Dare they don't know what issue first appearance of Diamond Head was. How dare they?
How dare they?
Really, really quick before we end this, I have to just say, when you do see that original art and you see the little imperfect, it's like because you remember it on the comic and it's so burned into your head, and then when you see it, it's like seeing something like it new all over again. It's amazing when you see that stuff. Like, so
Yes,
I can imagine what you felt when you saw the cover, and it's like seeing it new all over again. You know what I mean?
Yes, it just didn't seem real to me. It seemed
It doesn't. It doesn't. Oh, God. Okay. So we like to thank everybody. First, we definitely want to say subscribe, like, because we got to get more known out there. But we have a little announcement. If you came and you waited all the way till the end here, we have a little announcement. Our first guest star is coming next week. And like I said, I told you when we started that I have some friends, and we have a legend coming, a legit legend. And it isn't Roy Thomas. I'm sorry. I said in a previous episode that Roy was going to be the first, but I talked to this man, and he wants to get on, and I can't get to Roy till next month. So, Steve, do you want to tell the people who's coming?
Now, I've been slathering for an hour, right? But
this is a boom, you guys. This is a big, big boom. Here comes the boom.
Here's the crackerjack surprise.
Yeah, I'm going to explode because we have got time to speak with legendary writer Steve Englehart.
Mr. Star-Lord himself.
I've been waiting over 30 years to speak with Steve Englehart. I make it my mission to talk about Steve Englehart every day. Okay?
So make sure you...
When it comes to the Avengers, there's Roy... And then there's it's that close. I'm telling you. And then Defenders. So if you guys want to see someone losing their composure, saliva, even blood coming from my ears, next week I'm going to try my best to hold it together as a professional, okay, on this podcast. But I am so excited. I can't tell you how excited I am and we're actually going to get a chance to have Steve tell us some good stuff. We're going to get in the weeds. We are going to have a great time.
So make sure you tune into issue number 5, because the great Steve Englehart. And we'd like to thank everybody for joining us once again. Otto, 3 Men in a Basement, thank you so much for the technical support. I assume Otto or Roger's going to be here for the Steve Englehart one. Which one?
Oh, Roger's not coming in for this. This is all me.
I didn't think so.
This is all me. I want to know the story of the Luke Cage and Dr. Doom battle, and how Luke Cage destroyed a Quinjet over $60 at Dr.
Was
Doom.
it 60? I thought it was 50. It was at 60?
It was 50 or 60. It was 50 or 60. But he destroyed a multi-million-dollar Quinjet over this to get to the island. And I can't wait to hear this. So
yes, and he should still be in jail for that.
Yes.
So Steve, get us out of here. What do we say? What do we say to the fans when we're out of here?
You know what, guys? Thank you very much. Bomb!